Hey everyone, Eonin here from Eonin's Edge, and today I'm going to be reviewing the new Petrified Fish Havrog. This is the all blacked out version of the knife. So let's jump right in as I always do with basic specs. We've got a K110 high flat grind blade here in a drop point. Nice thick belly on it. We've got ceramic ball bearings that the knife's riding on. We've got dual machined out full stainless steel liners. We've got what I am calling layer contoured micarta handles. We've got a tie pocket clip on this knife. And we've got some interesting, what I'm calling thumb blocks instead of studs. You've got a fine usable edge on this knife of 3 1/8 of an inch. You've got a scale length of 4 3/8. You got a tip to tail length of 7.5 and a weight of 4.5 ounces. So let's talk about what I liked about this knife. First of all, the blade. The blade is one of the big features of this knife. The blade shape, the grind, and the way that this knife cuts is fantastic. This knife was a very, very pleasant knife to put in your hand and put to use for cutting tasks. I cut through a ton of cardboard. I always have a lot of that here in the house. This thing just was so much fun to cut through cardboard with. It was amazing. You combine that with good ergos on this knife, and it makes it a fun and reliable EDC knife and a very good cutting and slicing knife. When I talk about the ergos, I'll give you this right here. So this is how I typically held this knife here. So in this position with this nice wide flat that leads into, I would say it's not necessarily meant to be a finger choil. It's a little bit more of a sharpening choil, but they give you this flat position. This is where I held this knife most of the time. And this knife felt very good and very substantial. If you want to hold it back here, you can, and you get a little bit more of a natural placement of your thumb on this little upswept section of the blade and where the jimping is. So again, very nice. I want to talk about two other things too. What I call layer contoured micarta. We've been seeing this more and more from manufacturers where they take micarta and they make a few passes. And what that kind of does is it really gives a place for your fingers to set on this side of the grip. And it adds a little thickness back here in the palm swell area. So the knife has good thickness in the middle of your hand. And then they cut this down. They kind of angled this in a little bit in the front. So the knife is a little thinner here where your pinch points, where your grab points are for doing your work. Fantastic. And I really believe that this type of micarta design, where it's layer contoured and it's also tapered from back to front a little bit. The knife's a little thicker in the back, a little thinner here in some of these areas that you reach around the knife. They're very noticeable differences. I mean, very minimal differences, but they're very noticeable in your hand if you take the time to actually hold the knife and think about how it feels. And then finally, with this nice wide flat that they have here, you can get a forward finger position, no problem like this. Wrap this other finger in here and get right around this thing and still have a really nice grip in this position. Can you ride up over the blade in like a Filipino modified saber grip? Sure. And this knife felt excellent to cut with in all of these positions. So the ease of use, the good ergos, and what I think is a great thing that I'm starting to see more in some knife manufacturers is what I'm calling these layer contoured micarta scales. This is what I would like to see in micarta. Don't just give me a plain old scale. Put some thought into it and give me something that is ergonomically friendly in my hands. Love it. These, I'm calling them thumb blocks. They are not made of aluminum. They are made of some type of sort of G10-ish FRN type of material. They screw in and out easily. I did take these off just to see what the deal was with them. They do come off, and I'm sure it costs a lot less to mold one of these than it does to machine out a steel thumb stud. And the other thing about it is the knife locks up into place great, by the way, is that it gives you a nice chunky thing here with the thumb stud, since that is the only method to deploy this knife with. It gives you a nice chunky thumb stud to kick out there. And the manufacturers can sculpt and shape these any way they like. Not bad, actually. I'm okay with that. On a budget knife, I think this is a great idea, instead of having to spend a lot of extra money machining out, titanium or aluminum, going with something like this. It's a typical petrified fish. It has good build quality, and the fit and finish on the knife is really good. So the blade steel we'll talk about real quick. I did say I loved cutting with this thing. The coating held up great. It's a very, very light black washed. Very light. When I say very light, it's super light, but there is some washing going on there. It's K110, which is basically just ever so slightly more stainless version of D2, but it's got a nice, well-coated blade, so I don't think that's going to be an issue. And the liners and all that are all coated, as well as the tie pocket clip. So good to go there. So let's talk about one more thing too. The balance point on this knife was about a 1/2 inch behind the pivot. So the balance point on this knife is kind of right here. If you're holding it in the more upward position, you can feel a little bit of, just a tiny bit of handle heaviness. When you're holding it back like this, it feels really well balanced. Why? Because the balance point's right in front of your finger, right? So depending on which grip you're in, you may or may not notice a little bit of handle heaviness to this knife, but it's very slight. So let's talk about the dislikes. Okay, I love the micarta. I love all these other things on the knife. I hate this pocket clip. Now, if you look at it very carefully, you can see that it goes upward and has a little bend here toward the middle and then comes back down. I did that because this pocket clip out of the box was absolutely, positively, completely unusable. I will save my profanity-laced tirade for another time talking about this, but this pocket clip was one of the worst pocket clips I've ever seen. I put it in a pair of jeans that literally ripped the denim. It was so tight. So what I did was I borrowed a $15 pair of jewelry pliers, non-marking jewelry pliers. I took my trusty Weeha bits and Weeha driver, and I took this clip off and I bent it up here in the middle so it was at a high point. It was well off the knife. And then I gradually took the pliers and I adjusted it back down so it's just ever so slightly shy of touching. So now it has an upward arc and a downward arc. And it works really good like this. It doesn't quite make complete contact with the knife. It's ever so slightly. You can kind of see right there. There's a tiny bit of daylight between there. But now the clip actually works. It is not a deep carry clip. It does not have a ton of room in here, but by arcing it up and bending it down here in the middle, I didn't leave any real permanent marks or anything on it. But by doing that, I made a clip that was at least functional and I could actually carry and review this knife. So if you buy this knife, realize the pocket clip is very poorly designed. It's beautiful, it's titanium, it looks really cool, but it had no flex to it whatsoever, zero. I tried putting coins and stuff underneath it first. I put a nickel underneath it for a couple days. Didn't make a difference. This tie clip was completely uncooperative and unusable with the way that it came out of the box. Now, an otherwise great knife, but that for me is an issue. And again, I need to point it out because if you get one of these and you try to stick it in your pocket and rip all the threads out of your pants, you're going to be like, damn it, Eonin should have said something about this. So the pocket clip is a thumbs down. If you have access to jewelry pliers or you want to tape it up and kind of tweak it and bend it a little bit and you're okay with doing that yourself, like I was, then I'm sure you, without too much effort, you can get this thing bent into a position where it works well and it goes in and out of the pocket. The knife carried well. Once I got the pocket clip to a usable state, it looks great. Gorgeous micarta, good build quality, and the knife is very, very fun to use. The blade held up great. I didn't even have to strop it after I was done. It literally kept a nice sharp edge. So kudos for that as well. from Petrified Fish. So let's do a couple quick size comparisons because we want to get you folks moving on about your day. So here's the PF next to a knife that a lot of people know and own. This is a Havrog Deca Gen 2, which is basically the same size as a bug out, although this is the better knife out of the bug out in this one. Don't tell Zach I said that. But anyway, this is the Havrog Deca Gen 2 in 20 CV next to that rug. But you can see there's a tremendous amount of difference in the thickness and the bulkiness of these two knives. So even though overall length is pretty similar, this is a lot more substantial knife in your hands. Now let's give you something that's a much closer approximation in size to the Havrog, and that is a full-size Benchmade Griptilian. Very, very similar in size, as you can see. Similar in size, heft, thickness. I love the blade much better on the Petrified Fish than I do on the Benchmade Griptilian, which is why I also probably really love the Doug Ritter RSK more than I like the Griptilian as well, because the Ritter RSK Mark I has a blade that's shaped a little bit more like this one. So there you go. So there's a couple quick size comparisons, kind of get you in the right ballpark. And again, this was a fun knife. Once I got over the crazy amount of pocket clip frustration I had with this thing and got it bent just right so that it's usable and functional, the knife was a lot of fun to carry. It comes in 3 different colorways right now. It comes in all black, it comes in a green, and it comes in a kind of dark tan. So that is it. That is the Petrified Fish Havrog. This is a sub $50 knife. It goes for around 47 or 48 bucks typically on Amazon. I believe they're starting to come into stock a little bit more now. I got this one very shortly after it came out and have had some time to use it and really enjoyed it. So there you go, folks. Petrified Fish Havrog, sub $50 budget knife, has some cool features in it. If you like this video, hit the like button down there for me, please. Helps my channel analytics. And also think about subscribing if you enjoy my videos. I'm Ionin. You guys have a great day and stay sharp.